Welcome to the Reddit library. Today we'll be looking at r/AskReddit, where user I totally do not whale asked, "Serious, what is your I was that close to dying moment?" Was a theater tech in high school. One of the techs was showing the new girl how to use the fly system, a hanging pipe that you hang things on, clouds, airplane, etc. When you bring the fly down, you yell, "Fly down," and everyone who hears it echoes it, so everyone quickly knows it's coming down. You also drop it slowly. Well, I was working center stage, right under the fly. She didn't say "fly down" until she had already dropped it, and she just let it fall really fast until it was hip-hyped from the ground. If I would have stepped forward or back instead of right, I would be dead. Luckily, I stepped right and just stared at her. She knew. I'm surprised they even let students operate the fly, especially if it had heavy stuff attached. Every show I did in high school had an adult to do it, and in college there was always a spotter. Students ran everything when I was there. The teacher was always around and an adult helper, but we built and worked everything with their help. What I remember, I'm 11 years old playing outside and it starts to rain. I wake up in the hospital 3 days later. What happened? Lightning struck the ground next to me. I was knocked unconscious, thrown into the air, my heart stopped, paramedics used CPR and a defibrillator to bring me back. I'm all grown up now, with the only long-term effect being I have no memories of that summer before being struck. Which kind of sucks because that was the summer we went to Disneyland. OMG son, you really don't remember that summer? Wowee, we took you to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower, Venice to see gondolas, and also Disneyland to see the Predators. Oh well, we're broke for the next 10 years, so no more presents. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Friend was driving me to Taco Bell, was at a median trying to make a left turn. Friend gets distracted by phone and takes foot off brake. Car coming from other direction sees us rolling and swerves at the last second to avoid crashing into my side at 50 miles an hour. Friend realizes he's in the middle of the road and guns it into the parking lot. I don't know what I did to deserve to be that lucky, but I'm somehow still alive. Hit him with the old New Zealand anti-texting ad. The link to that video will be in the description, so check it out if you want to see what it is. As it turns out, this kid ended up totaling his car 2 weeks later by trying to drift into a neighborhood after almost missing entrance because he was on his phone, and ended up spinning out and hitting the concrete sign. Gets grounded from driving until he turns 18. Last I heard, he got his license suspended for reckless driving. I thought you meant the guy from the ad. A car almost drove me over intentionally when I was cycling. I sprinted out of there as fast as possible, and to this day I have no idea why he did it. Oh my god, I have a friend who was cycling on a side road in my rural town. Someone rear-ended him, then slammed on the brakes before running him over. They just reversed and went on their way without stopping at all. Had he been badly injured, he would have been in a lot of trouble and might have even died. What injuries did he sustain then if he was run over? They didn't really run him over. They stopped as his head was under their bumper, then reversed back a few feet, then drove around him. He remembers looking up at the bottom of their bumper, then the car speeding away. He had a concussion from his head hitting the ground, and his face, arms, and legs were pretty torn up. Edit. His. 5/10/2019. I was rear-ended by a dump truck. In a coma for 42 days, and now I can't walk. I'm immunosuppressed and breathing is compromised, so who knows what the future holds. Life is good, people, so enjoy every day. Damn, I remember when I was almost rear-ended by a dump truck. I looked in my rear vision mirror to see one coming at me at like 80 kph, which is equivalent to 50 miles per hour. While I was stopped in a traffic queue. I just stared and assumed I was about to die. He slammed on his brakes and swerved into the next lane, tire smoking. I feel so lucky. I wrote an email to the company outlining what happened and telling them to thank the driver for his quick reaction. I hope it gets better for you, mate. That's cool that you took the time to write the company. I just feel like he definitely deserves some praise. I was driving a 1996 Shopbox with no airbags and definitely would have been pretty cooked if he didn't swerve out of the way. Person I was driving with fell asleep at the wheel on the highway. I grabbed the wheel, can't remember much about the moment at all now. Full 360 to cross 3 lanes and somehow made it over safely into the median without hitting anyone or being hit. So lucky. This exact thing happened to me in high school, except I was the driver. We missed getting hit by a semi by a few feet. Narcolepsy is fun. I was 8 years old and it was midsummer and it felt great in the mornings, so I decided to go do kid stuff outside. I started climbing a tree in my front yard up to the point I had always gone to, but for some reason that day I decided to go as high as I possibly could. The tree was on the part of my lawn past the sidewalk and against the street, and at this point I'm 25 feet above the pavement. I go to grab a branch that was too brittle and fall all 25 feet onto the concrete, snapping my left wrist, CF. Getting holes and tears on my lungs and rupturing my spleen. Before I went into surgery, keep in mind I was 8, I overheard the doctors telling my parents that they didn't think I'd survive through the surgery. One of the scariest things a kid could possibly hear. Oof, yeah. Spleen injuries slash surgeries are very dangerous since it receives so much of the blood supply. I was crazy into climbing very high trees as a kid, so it's a miracle nothing happened to me. They couldn't even operate on the spleen because of the holes in my lungs. If they did, my lungs would have collapsed because the pressure imbalance would have taken over. I was lucky it healed on its own. I ran across the street as a kid without looking. It turns out there's a reason they tell you not to do that. A van had been driving around the corner, slammed on the brakes, only stopped a few inches away from me. I waved and carried on across the road. I must have given the poor driver a heart attack. I remember as a kid watching another kid running across the street when a car came. It was a calm street and the car wasn't fast, but the idiot kid thought he needed to run across the street before the car came. Well, his timing was really bad and this kid smacked his head against the side window of the car. Just full speed slammed against the slow car. The driver was so shocked and got out, questioned the kid, and the kid was a little confused still and wanted to go on. The kid was unharmed though, but oh god, the memory of this is so funny. I actually laughed remembering this. Almost 10 years ago, I was suffering from stomach pain. At the time, I was drinking vodka daily and didn't have any direction in my life. I was still living at home and it finally came to the point where it was obvious that the drinking wasn't the problem. I went to the hospital and was diagnosed with diverticulitis. I waited so long to be treated that I was pale as a ghost and required emergency surgery to correct the problem. After all that happened, I took better care of myself, but just recently I was taken to the hospital again for severe stomach pains. I required emergency surgery again to correct a hernia that formed and was cutting off blood to my lower intestines. I had to have more of my lower intestines removed to get rid of all of the dead tissue. Both experiences were terrible and I felt like I was on my deathbed for both of them. My wife had that after eating too many pecans. She nearly died when her stomach got infected. She's a real soldier when it comes to pain, and it even made her cry, so it must have been agony. Glad that you're feeling better now. So, when I was about 6, I was at a pool with my mom and an entitled cousin. He wanted to swim in an inflatable alligator I was on, so he just pushed me off of it, and I was there, drowning at the bottom of the pool. He didn't really care about me dying down there. Thank God my aunt noticed I was gone and that bubbles coming out of the water. She then realized what was going on and saved me. Fun fact, my cousin didn't even get grounded for that. My teenage cousin held my head underwater until I nearly blacked out, vomited up water and freaked out, but he didn't even get a stern talking to. Doing some electrical work with my dad, who is a licensed electrician, reached into an open box that had some tools I set in the bottom without looking and nearly grounded myself on a leg of 3-phase 480 volt. I had just moved my left hand from conduit to masonry as I was leaning over. If I hadn't done that, I would probably not be here today. Wow, insane. In school, working to get my journeymans right now, we're always taught to try and touch masonry or concrete as often as possible while working on live feeds. Quick question, why couldn't you shut the feed off and work on it safely? Well, we were not doing things 100% properly, I will say that. Sometimes you cut corners on home jobs to save yourself an immense amount of grief. In this case, we left this particular fuse box live since it powered the light controllers for the building and we had zero natural light. Everything else was de-energized. But it was mostly my fault for reaching into a live box blind. I knew it was live, should not have done that. Caught in an avalanche and trapped under snow for around 6 hours. Side note, what is going on with this post? Everyone's responses are duplicated like 5 times. Edit, I realize I was super vague, just didn't have much time earlier. This was about 10 years ago and I have no problem talking about any part of it, so if you have questions, feel free to ask. That's terrifying. How did you get out? As stupid as it sounds, I was able to get my cell phone in my pocket. Took me about an hour to get it though, and call 911. My battery was low, but I was able to tell them where I was. They sent search and rescue who came and dug me out. Considering chance of survival past a few minutes is exceptionally low, I got super lucky. I was born with a cleft palate, which is a birth defect that can prevent a child from eating and talking properly and can cause the child to starve to death if the birth defect isn't identified and the child isn't given the correct feeding equipment. The doctor on staff to identify my birth defect had left to play golf right before I was born, and the nurses weren't qualified to diagnose me with a cleft palate and give me the proper feeding equipment. I guess the organization at the hospital was horrible, because about 2.5 days later after I was born, no one had diagnosed me and thus I had not been fed. Eventually, one of the nurses found out what was going on and fed me using the proper equipment, but because she was not qualified to make that decision, she was fired. If I had been allowed to starve for just a few more hours, I would have died. That nurse's decision cost her her job but gave me my life, and anytime I'm considering suicide, I remember that. Thank you, whoever you are, for the gift of life. It just shows you how important doing the right thing is, no matter what the repercussions are. Did you ever manage to track down that nurse? I'm sure she would appreciate hearing from you. No, I haven't been able to find her. I don't have her name, so it would be pretty difficult. Hopefully someday I'll meet her again, even if I don't know she was the one that saved me. Do you have any stories from when you were close to death? Let us know in the comments below for a chance to be featured in an upcoming video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more from the library. See you soon.